Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Westside Congregation. We are glad you are joining us for our service today. I am Donna Johnston, and our speaker today is Stacy Gebeke. Our service today is titled, We Persisted. If this is your first encounter with Westside, we welcome you. We are so glad you found us online, and we hope you continue to join us in the future. If you have questions about our congregation, please contact Reverend Dr. Nancy Hitt, our consulting minister. She can be reached at ministeruuwc@gmail.com. Here are our announcements for today. Social Justice Committee is sponsoring an online meeting on Monday, March 15th at 7 to 8:30 p.m. titled On Racism. This is in response to a denominational proposal to add an 8th principle. You will receive a link in an email. Please join us if able. Please look at our updated website. Please continue to bring your papers for Rio the dog. There is a bin on the patio. Please replace the bricks. We invite you to enjoy today's Animal Ministry Moment with Bramcast Hecht.
Hi, this is some cat wisdom. When in doubt, keep a straight face. Cats rarely change their expression. That's one reason they look so dignified. It also helps them hide their ploys. Now this is another kitty, and his name is Six Toes. When I used to get teased about having extra toes, I'd get so angry that I'd want to flip the bird. But because of my extra digits, I could never figure out how. My humans like to show me off at dinner parties and say, "Look at our mutant cat." Mutant? I was so distraught that I considered jumping off a bridge, but I'd have to do it 9 times, and that was just too much work. I decided I had no choice but to embrace my plus-size paws. I couldn't spend my entire life hoping to be adopted by a cat lady with a foot fetish. I just had to accept that some people will make fun of what they can't understand and will become jealous that they don't have extra toes to more quickly bury their cat litter.
We invite you to sit back and get comfortable in your space. Close your eyes if you feel so moved. Think of a time in your life when you were with women. A time when you felt their love and support. Pull that feeling around you like a warm cloak or blanket to snuggle under. Bring this feeling with you as you return to us. Open your eyes when you are ready. Please join us in our chalice lighting. You will find the words on your screen, and we invite you to light your personal chalice candle if you wish. We light this chalice to honor the unpaid and often undervalued physical, intellectual, and emotional labor of women. Please join us now in our affirmations as they appear on your screen. Life is a gift. We gathered in community to celebrate the glories and the mysteries of this great gift. In the light of truth and in the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, and to share. Love is the doctrine of this congregation. The quest for truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To seek knowledge in freedom, to serve others in community, to the end that all souls grow into harmony with creation. Thus do we covenant with one another. Shalom. It is our custom each week to share some of our joys and concerns with each other as we build the network of our community. If you have a personal joys and concerns candle at home, draw it closer to you now. I will invite you to light it as we light our final white candle together in a few moments. We light a candle for hope as more people get vaccinated, that we will find our way out of this pandemic. We light a candle of shared sorrow for all those who have lost their loved ones in this pandemic. We light this candle for Jim Gebeke, who lost his life on March 2nd. He was a beloved member of an extended family. We light a candle of concern for all those who are struggling with their mental health with this prolonged time of isolation. For all that we still hold in our hearts and minds, we light this last candle together. For all the victims of racial violence, for those whose pain has gone unheard, unseen, and unacknowledged, we light this red candle in honor of their struggle and their lives. Blessed be. For today's moment for all ages, we have a book called She Persisted, which was written by Chelsea Clinton. Sometimes being a girl isn't easy. At some point, someone may tell you your dreams are impossible. Don't listen to them. These 13 American women didn't. They persisted. Harriet Tubman was born enslaved, but her story of bravery didn't end there. She persisted in escaping from slavery and led her family, friends, and strangers to freedom. Once Helen Keller became blind and deaf. Few people thought she'd ever be able to read, write, or speak, but she persisted and learned how to do all three and used her story to work for more opportunities for people with disabilities all around the world. After her family fled Ukraine for a new home in New York City, Clara Lemlick got a job working at a factory with terrible conditions. She persisted and helped secure better conditions for thousands of workers. Nellie Bly was determined to become a reporter, even though some men said it wasn't something women could do, at times putting her safety at risk. She persisted throughout her career in exposing how badly people were being treated. From an early age, Virginia Apgar was determined to be a doctor. She persisted in creating the Apgar score to test a newborn baby's health, which hospitals all over the world still use today. Maria Tallchief was teased in school for her Native American heritage and later told to change her name to something that sounded Russian. She persisted ignoring the taunting and bad advice, to become the first great American prima ballerina. As a 15-year-old African-American girl, Claudette Colvin was expected to give up her seat on the bus to a white woman. In her refusal to get up, she persisted in taking a stand for what's right, inspiring others, including Rosa Parks, to stay seated for equal rights and justice. When Ruby Bridges was in kindergarten, many schools still refused African American students with their equal right to an education. She had to walk through protesters to get to school, but she persisted, integrating an all-white elementary school in New Orleans. As the first woman to serve as both a U.S. representative and a U.S. senator, Margaret Chase Smith could have let that be her legacy. Instead, she persisted in championing women's rights, standing up for free speech, and supporting space exploration. Sally Ride always believed women would succeed in any math or science career. She persisted and became the first American woman in space, and then created programs to help generations of young women achieve their dreams. When, as a kid, Florence Griffith Joyner visited her father, he would urge her to run as fast as a jackrabbit. She persisted in believing she could, and at the 1988 Summer Olympics became the fastest woman ever. Oprah Winfrey's grandmother expected Oprah to become a maid. Oprah knew that her dreams would take her somewhere else. She persisted and became a media superstar, hosting the highest-rated talk show of all time. Watching fictional judges on television inspired Sonia Sotomayor to want to be a real-life judge. She persisted, eventually becoming the Supreme Court Justice and the first ever Latina to sit on America's highest court. So if anyone ever tells you no, if anyone ever says your voice isn't important or your dreams are too big, remember these women. They persisted, and so should you. Awesome. Our expenses continue even as we stay at home and we meet online. We thank you for your continuing support and love. Our mailing address is P.O. Box 15146, Rio Rancho, New Mexico, 87124. I do not like your patriarchy. I do not like the inherent misogyny. I do not like it here or there. I do not like it anywhere. I do not like it in private homes. I do not like it in state house domes. I do not like it between school walls. I do not like it in Congress halls. I do not like it in your churches. I do not like that woman it besmirches. I do not like the rows of tombs containing the commanded fruits of our wombs. I do not like the elevation of the father. I do not like the disparagement of the mother. I do not like this plan. I do not like it in any land.
Representation matters. Part of the spark that fueled the creation of this nation was no taxation without representation. Unfortunately, that representation was limited to white men. 45 of 46 presidents have been white men, and 45 of 46 vice presidents have been white men. Our first black man was elected as president in 2008, and in 2020, Kamala Harris was the first black and Asian American woman to become vice president. For many of us, January 20th, 2021 was an overwhelmingly emotional day. We watched Sonia Sotomayor swear in Kamala Harris as vice president, and we finally had representation. Shards of glass were on the ground as that glass ceiling is barely hanging on. In 2008, I was so excited to cast my primary vote for Hillary Clinton. I had always hoped to someday see that day that a woman ran for president. I won't lie, I was devastated when she dropped out and was likened to a cheerleader by the press. None of the men who dropped out were relegated to that demeaning role. However, Barack Obama was so incredibly qualified, and he inspired hope for a better nation. He inspired hope that we were changing, and maybe we were almost ready for that last glass ceiling to go. Fast forward to 2016, and Hillary Rodham Clinton wins the nomination for the Democratic Party. She continues to show her intelligence, her perseverance, and her qualifications, and I feel hope. I proudly cast my vote early and sit down to watch history on that cold November night. Like so many others, I was left stunned and heartbroken by the results. My country was not ready for a better future, but instead wanted a man who couldn't see her qualifications. They were so far above his. They were happy with a man who bragged about his horrible treatment of women, who mocked the disabled, who insulted our allies, and who filled the nation's soul with anger and hatred. I lost hope that I would ever see a woman in the office of vice president or president ever in my lifetime. I joined millions of other women and our allies as we marched around the world. The solidarity was nice, but it didn't change the depressing reality that we were living with. I was stunned and excited to see the number of strong, qualified women running for president in the primaries. I sadly watched them all drop out, often maligned for the perception of not being ladylike. Their crime? Holding the men on the debate stage accountable for their words, votes, and actions. Once again, women were expected to be silent so that men wouldn't be uncomfortable. Once again, women were placed in the back seat and relegated to cheerleaders. They were expected to apologize for staying out of their lanes. Once again, we were left with the choice of two old white men to be our saviors. I can admit that I was furious that once again I had to choose a man instead of qualified women. Women who had earned the right to be on those stages and tickets. I am thrilled that Kamala Harris is our vice president. I really am. However, it is time for the demographics of power to change in this country and honestly in the world. We cannot change what is wrong in our country and the world if the people in power and their perspectives never change. Here in this nation, the time of all the power being in the hands of old white men who claim Christianity needs to change. Our Constitution gives a separation of church and state, and yet every election cycle we are hearing about their individual faiths. I don't need to know what deity they worship. I need to know if they can work with others of different cultures, races, gender identities, and faiths. The table of power needs to become bigger and more diverse to represent who we all are. Old, white, male, Christian cannot continue to be elevated over female, transgender, LGBTQ, atheist, agnostic, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, Black, Indigenous, and people of color. All of these perspectives need to be heard, to be seen, to be acknowledged, and to be part of the fabric of who we are. We cannot take the steps needed to end poverty, homelessness, mental health issues, and food insecurity if those in power have never had to count pennies for food or gas. They have no understanding of what it means to choose between food and medicine for a sick family member. They have no empathy because empathy comes from experience and the ability to see beyond yourself. We cannot get to our full strength when more than half our population knows what it means to stay silent because you need this job. To smile even while a part of your soul is dying from that silence. To laugh uncomfortably at the inappropriate jokes meant to keep women and minorities in their acceptable places. The old white men in power use that power to keep the status quo going. The Me Too movement is scary for them. The idea that they could be called out on their behavior in the past is terrifying, yet too many of us have been their victims. These decades leading to centuries of limited representation have stunted our growth as a nation. It is 2021 and we are finally beginning to see more women in office, more Black people being seen as leaders, people of color being elected and inspiring change, and people who are not Christian being elected. We still need white men at the table, but they must be ready and willing to work with women, people of color, people who have different preferred pronouns, different cultures and faiths, and people who have worked in so-called menial jobs. We need people who understand that we are only as strong as our weakest, most vulnerable citizens. It is time for the hard conversations to happen. It is time for pain to be heard, acknowledged, and addressed so that healing can happen. It is not enough to say that this should not happen. Change needs to happen to stop it from continuing. 4 years ago, during the confirmation hearings for Jeff Sessions, Elizabeth Warren tried to read a letter from Coretta Scott King about him. We all watched as Senator Mitch McConnell silenced her. His words started a movement. He stated most arrogantly that she was warned. She was given an explanation. Nevertheless, she persisted. Many of us also saw that the letter wasn't the problem when Democratic men were allowed to read it. But instead, it was that Elizabeth wanted to use her woman's voice for a woman's letter. This clearly proclaimed that a woman's words are only palatable if read by a man. This is why so many of us are so angry. We are silenced, and yet a male ally can take our words and he is heard. We do the work, we are silenced, and they become our saviors and they get the credit. This has to change. This pandemic has shown how vulnerable women are in the working world. For many families trying to juggle childcare, virtual school, working from home, and the new demands and dynamics, it is women who are being forced to quit and stay home. This decision is forced on them because of income disparity. Society accepts it as just what women are supposed to do without having to acknowledge that this choice impacts her social security payments, her ability to claim disability, and even impacts her when she is once again looking for a job. It also sends the message to her sons that it is acceptable for them to expect the same, and it tells their daughters to expect to have to make the same sacrifice. As record numbers of women are being forced out of the workforce, we are losing their voices, their perspectives, and their unique strengths. Sadly, most don't even realize the harm this does. I don't want men and their voices silenced. I want their voices and views to be equal to women's. Not less, but certainly not more. It is time to work together, to combine our strengths and to work towards better solutions for all we face. We need to temper the drive towards the goal with the consideration of the process. We are not successful if we meet the goal, but we have left too many behind in the process. We need to reevaluate how we see strength. We are making progress. I can see it. As a young girl, I remember reading Nancy Drew and Pippi Longstocking, and they are the only female characters I remember having their own adventures instead of hearing about them from the male main characters. There were others, I'm sure. However, they were fairly stereotypical. Now we see so many strong girls featured in books. We see so many women finally being acknowledged for their work. The women of NASA finally being acknowledged in Hidden Figures. Without them, Neil Armstrong doesn't make it to the moon. Yet I never heard of these women and their contributions to the moon missions until recently. I heard about Hedy Lamarr's beauty, but had to search for her inventions that helped the Allied powers in World War II. I've heard about Bill Gates and the rest of the computer nerds, but only recently started hearing about Admiral Grace Hopper and her work with supercomputers. Growing up, I heard very little about Susan B. Anthony, Nellie Bly, Clara Barton, Florence Nightingale, and even Amelia Earhart. Without Sacagawea, Lewis and Clark wouldn't have survived. And yet in many stories about that journey, she was relegated to the role of bed warmer, cook, and mother. Girls need to hear about these women. They need to know that so many women were pioneers in the STEM fields. Without Claudette Colvin and Rosa Parks, the civil rights movement doesn't get started or is delayed even longer than it was. Without Ruby Bridges being brave enough to walk through the gauntlet of screaming white people, schools might still be segregated. Claudette and Rosa sat so that Ruby could walk and Kamala could run. It is time for our voices, our stories to be heard. Our successes are critical for all societies. As always, we offer a sincere invitation to you to respond to what you have heard and experienced here. Please use our services webpage, our YouTube page, and our Facebook site to let us know what you are thinking and feeling about what we share here. Thank you. Please join us in extinguishing our chalice as the words appear on your screen. We extinguish the flame, but not the light we need to illuminate our path forward. Sally Ride felt that young girls need to see role models in whatever careers they may choose, just so they can picture themselves doing these jobs someday. You can't be what you can't see.